I realized there are unique, outrageous acts of love that can be committed by me and me alone, and that is the unique purpose, obligation, joy, and responsibility. It's my ability to respond to reality. That's my outrageous act of love.
A planetary awakening in love through a unique self-symphony.
What a privilege it is to be part of this global community.
There's a voice within me that asks, who am I, right? Who am I in all of this?
Each and every one of us has a unique gift to give that we desperately need.
Welcome to the heart of the revolution, everyone. It is with such deep joy that we are together today in one mountain, many paths. Our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni call a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. We are activating a new humanity, and we are awakening as a new species, Homo, Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens. As a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo, no one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. I am Christina Tahel, the co-executive producer, along with Jamie Long, Krista Josepha, and Jacqueline Clark, and we are so delighted to be together with each and every one of you for our 331st live community broadcast. What a privilege it is to be part of a global community that contributes to the flourishing of planet Earth. On Zoom and Facebook, say hello and let us know where you're from in the chat box. Check that your Zoom settings say everyone so that we can hear from you. After we say hello, we use the chats for following the Dharmic conversation, perhaps adding a few words, always in symphony, resonating with the Dharma. It's a creative and intimate use of the chat box. Our beloved Jacqueline Clark is looking for someone to partner with her in creating beautiful Word documents. Knowledge of MS Word and formatting is essential. Her email is in the chat box now. Our Mystery School in Europe happens August 21st through 25th. Save the dates. This upcoming Tuesday is a special day in relationship to the Mystery School. It is Valentine's Day. And as outrageous lovers, we encourage each other to expand our love list so no one is left out of the circle. Please copy the link in the chat box now and download these beautiful I love you cards and share them with everyone. When you are signed up for One Mountain emails, you will also receive them in your inbox. As a special outrageous love Valentine's gift, also, you will get a $200 discount, €200 discount on your tickets for the Eros Mystery School until the 1st of March. Last week, 17 of us met to study and practice Eros. We are still welcoming new participants. This every other week Saturday gathering is a great way to prepare for Eros Mystery School. So do join our next sacred study group on February 18th, next Saturday. Email Jamie Long for more details. Jamie's email is in the chat box now. What to expect today? First, a Dharma recap from myself. Then Dr. Marc Gafni will set our intention. Then David A. Tan will resonate the evolutionary love code that we're working with. Then we step into our evolutionary sense making with Dr. Gafni, and then we move into meditation to enter prayer. Krista Josefa will invite us deeper into community, and to close, we will bring people on for our goodbyes and a short dance practice. I welcome all who are new. We need you. If this is your first time, these teachings do stand on their own, and every week's teaching does build on the week before. We encourage you to listen to previous episodes. You can also read previous episodes on Medium at the Office for the Future. You will hear unique language. Trust the magic ways the Dharma comes through your understanding. One mountain, many paths is radically committed to telling the new universe story. Now for my recap from last week's One Mountain, Many Paths. The Credo of Outrageous Love, 10 Principles of Outrageous Love. We recognize reality's intention is outrageous love, that we live in an intimate universe that is overflowing with value, that reality is standing for intimacy. Because that's what reality is at its core, suffering, evil, and outrageous pain are a violation of the very nature of reality. A new story of value needs a credo, and last week, Dr. Gafni gave us that credo, the 10 principles of outrageous love. 1, we live in a world of outrageous pain, and the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. Outrageous love responds to the reality of outrageous pain. We take full responsibility for our own transformation, and we acknowledge there is a mystery of outrageous pain which needs to be responded to. 2, we live in a world of outrageous beauty. Side by side with the pain, reality is lined with beauty. Outrageous beauty blows us open because that is the knowingness of reality's value living inside of us. 3, we are an outrageous lover. Our I-ness, our interior, is outrageous love. All our atoms and cellular structures are bonds of stunning intimacy. 4, outrageous love is the heart of existence itself. All the way up the evolutionary chain is driven by self-organizing systems that are animated by outrageous love, by Eros, and all of those live between us and in us. There is a difference, however, between outrageous love and ordinary love, or love which is understood to be a social construction. When you ask GPT-3, the new AI chat box, if love is real, it's not going to say yes. Ordinary love doesn't bind you. 5, the outrageous lover commits outrageous act of love. We break the boundary of the conventional. What is acceptable is the myth of separation. We keep every boundary that should be kept, and we break every boundary that should be broken. 6, outrageous acts of love are function of unique self. There is something irreducibly unique that lives in us, as us, and through us, and thus acts of love that can be done by us and us alone are ours to do. 7, we need to close the gap between our ability to feel the pain and our ability to heal the pain. The world seems to be so inordinately complicated, impossible to impact. The pain can be overwhelming. And because the news structures are based on clickbait, the win-lose metrics and the news structures amplifies all that happens that's tragic and skips the billions of gorgeous things happening. 8, outrageous acts of love address a unique need and a unique circle of intimacy and influence. No one person can heal the whole thing, but it is ours to feel the whole thing. We are not here by mistake. The intimate universe allured us into this place, into this life. On the ground, there is what to be done, the unique pain that is ours to heal. 9, planetary awakening in love through unique self symphonies. This is not a top-down vision. This is a bottom-up vision of self-organizing cosmos where each of us has something to contribute to the evolution of love in reality. 10, evolutionary family is more important than biological family. Biological family is wildly important. We are committed to the biological family, absolutely, because biology is not a coincidence. And the people we meet on the path that become our evolutionary partners, we love them and we are committed and invested. Let us be lived as outrageous love. Now, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and the sacred spaces of one mountain, many paths, and I turn my word to you, Dr. Marc Gafni.
And it's so, wonderful to be with everyone. And it's such an important day, right? And here we are on one mountain. And I want to invite everyone to step in any way that you can to make this revolution yours. One Mountain, Many Paths is a memory of the future. As we're poised between utopia and dystopia, as we're poised between existential and catastrophic risk on the one side, and the capacity to manifest the most beautiful world that history has ever manifested. Literally, two paths diverge in the woods. And we need here to take the road less traveled. Not the mainstream road, not the road that was painted in a movie a year and a half ago of Don't Look Up, not the road that is non-intimate with the future, and really non-intimate with the present and not even intimate with the past. The road that lives as a surface structure, the classical separate self, feeling her emptiness, desiccated, lost in our individual traumas, and unable to actually access the eros of reality that's actually awake and alive in us in every moment. No, our path is the road less traveled. Our path is the path of Da Vinci and Ficino and the Renaissance. Our path in this moment, which demands a new Renaissance, right? As a new form of Black Death, threatens reality as it threatened the Renaissance and devastated Europe and Asia. The new form of Black Death is the actual potential for catastrophic risk, which we just saw and we're going to talk about today. We just saw a catastrophic risk in one version of it all last week in Turkey and Syria. Existential risk, meaning either the death of humanity itself through one of 10 different existential risks, or the death of our humanity through a super technological society of upgraded algorithms and downgraded human beings. So we're here to be the revolution. And I want to invite you, this is yours. It's not my revolution. It's not Jacqueline's revolution, but it's not Haley's revolution. This is our revolution. And we're going to take this revolution and we're going to take it every place in the world. It's why we don't want to do this as a podcast. We want to create this new space of world religion as a context for our diversity, where we begin to articulate a shared ground of value, a shared story of value that allows us to overcome the global intimacy disorder, which then allows us to respond to global challenges with global coordination, and allows us to begin to build a universal grammar of value as we just said, as a context for our diversity, unique self-symphony of many religions and many nations and many groups, but we're playing the same music. We begin to understand that no one's left out of the story and no one's split off, and there are no strangers in the world. And so we're gonna be here together every week. This is what week is this, friends? 300 and what week? 325, 326. We've been here every week, and we're deepening. And there's an incredible group of human beings who are stepping up to actually write up the texts and share them on Medium. And Benjamin is stepping, and he's going to be spending the next 6 weeks actually increasing readership on Medium every day. He's going to be working every day. He's taking a year off, right? He's going to be working every day to actually, right, broaden our reach on Medium. So we actually broaden the revolution. And this is the internal group. This is our internal unique self-symphony. And we're working on writing a great library of value. Every day, all day, I moved to Vermont to be together with, right, a group of us and many of us who are working on One Mountain will be coming to Vermont. The center, right, created a space, and Dr. Kincaid is working on animating the space, which, 6, 7 guest bedrooms and an entire downstairs. You actually see the bookshelves in the back. The books aren't yet in it, right? We just set it up actually this morning. It's going to be covered with books, and we're going to be doing great library from here. We're going to be doing, right, movies, right, media, right, everything, right? We're going to tell the new story of value. We're not going to make it up. It's not going to be a declaration. It's not a new age story. It's not a human potential movement story. It's not a fundamentalist story. We're going to integrate the validated insights from every period of history. And like Da Vinci and Ficino did, tell a new story of value that actually changes the way we live, because we all live within a story. The only thing, this is one of the very few things that I agree with my friend Yuval Harari on, the only thing that changes the vector of history is the story from which we generate our reality. Telling a new story of value, changing the superstructure of reality, is ultimately infinitely more effective than any other move we can make. So if we want to heal suffering, we can't just look at, and we need to look at infrastructure issues. We need to look at social structure, legal issues. But actually, even our capacity to look and transform those comes from, right, a new story of value. And that's Homo sapien needs to become Homo Amor, right? A new human and a new humanity needs to emerge. Not the old perennial wisdom. The old perennial philosophy was locked in and emerges out of pre-modernity. It's the old perennial philosophy that emerges in modernity said, okay, these are the eternal truths of pre-modernity. They got that wrong. There's huge mistakes in perennial philosophy. We need to create something new, right? Which takes perennial philosophy as one of its pieces. And what we call here in One Mountain, Many Paths, an evolving perennialism and an evolving set of values that are eternal and yet evolving. And what that means and how that works is a major topic. We're putting out a short book on it, both of oral essays and of written essays, but I just join the revolution. That's what I'm saying, right? This is just a hello, right? Join the revolution. Figure out how you want to step up, right? Take your seat at the table. And that's how we respond to Aleppo. It's how we respond to Syria. It's how we respond to Turkey. And I want to talk this week, and David's going to read our code right now. This is a wildly important week, and I want to go slow and careful. We want to talk this week about the following unbearably agonizing question, which is something like this. What the fuck? And I apologize for that word. Oriana and I have an agreement, so apologies. But after you look at the pain of this week, how do we dare talk about the universal love story in a week in which 28,000 people died? And the expected death toll is 50,000. We're going to see a clip in a moment. Right? What does that mean? Remember, how do we talk about the universal love story? What does that even mean? Right? What kind of universe is it, right, that allows, right, that kind of event to take place? Okay? What does the universal love story mean in the face of immense suffering? That's our question for today. And we dedicate this question completely and directly to our brothers and sisters in Syria, in Turkey, some in Lebanon. We're going to be deep in this, and we're going to transform this, right? And it's an incredibly important, next, whatever it is, 40 minutes or so. The code is short. I'm going to turn to beloved David to read the code. Thank you, Taheli, for your beautiful Dharma recapitulation of the 10 principles of outrageous love. And thank you to Elena for the incredible writing that's going up or went up on Medium, which took a One Mountain from a couple of months ago and from last week and put them together in a kind of classical credo of outrageous love. Okay? So let's take this inside. David, give us the code, brother.
Thank you, beloved Mark. Welcome, everyone. How do we respond to this global intimacy disorder? And one of the things that I love about this community is that we're always expanding. We're an open system. So we're always feeling into what's going on all over the world so that we can respond with outrageous love and this practice of just moving toward and opening our hearts. So this code is very simple, as Mark said, because it's so deep and so poignant. So this week's evolutionary love code is: we live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. We live in a world of outrageous pain, and the only response is outrageous love. And I turn my word back to you, beloved Dr. Mark.
David, thank you. Thank you. Right? I mean, oh my God, right? We live in a world of outrageous pain, and the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. And I just want to ask you, if I can, brothers and sisters, I just want to say it again and just say it out loud wherever you are in the world. And just before we even talk about it, can we just feel it in our body? Okay? Oh my God, welcome, right? Right? Melissa, welcome, right? Welcome, everyone. Welcome, every single person, welcome. Like the deepest welcome in the world. Let's stay inside now, everyone. Okay, let's come together. Here we go. Welcome, right? We're welcome in Cosmos, but what does it mean to even talk about being welcome in Cosmos when 33,000 people, right? Colleen just wrote it in the chat box. 33,000 people didn't survive last week. What does it mean to be welcome in Cosmos? And when Cosmos is so obviously unfair in terms of what we understand fairness to be. And we have to do this for everyone in the world that's now asking this question. How do we talk about the universal love story in the face of outrageous pain? So we laid down last week these 10 principles of outrageous love. And the first principle was: we live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. So let's notice, okay, how does that work? So what's the first thing that this code and these principles are rejecting? And notice with me, my friend Elena, this is very subtle, it's very deep. As each one of these 10 principles actually needs to be unpacked. Each one is an entire world. This is a credo, and then there are volumes of heart to be poured into each one of these, and volumes of distinction. So let's start with the first distinction. And in order to start with the first distinction, I want to ask Krista to show us a clip. Before we go into the distinction, we need to feel this in the space. We need to be willing to not turn away. So let's take a look at a clip, and from that holy text of pain, and I'm going to ask everybody not to look away. It's a short clip. It's a minute. But we have to be willing to take it inside. So take it away. Oh my God.
يلا فين الطريق يا شباب؟ ولد يلا ما شاء الله. حركة ايدك يا رب. يلا ها اذا عم تطلع لسيارة اسعاف لا البابا هون لا تخافي يا جميل. عمو نور طلع علي لهون يا عمو نور. بابا هون نور. حكي البابا حكي. ايوه ما شاء الله ما شاء الله. ليك البابا حكي يا بابا. حكي يا بابا. الحمد لله على السلامة يا عمو. الحمد لله على السلامة يا عمو. الله أكبر ما شاء الله.
Right? Wow. Right? Allah Akbar. Could you see her face? Who saw her face, right? Who saw her eyes? Did you see the smile come into her eyes? Right? Who saw, right? Oh my God. Right? Oh my God. And there were so many scenes that didn't look that way. And there were so many scenes where there was just a limb found, right? Or a face severed from a body. We live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. So what does that mean? So number one, my friends, and I want to try and go through just gently, tenderly, we're going to do sense making here. We're going to do sense making here. We're going to try and go through like one by one. We're going to do sense making, right, for reality itself. So one, the first response that we cannot give to outrageous pain, the response that's not kosher, is a response that's been given by the religions all through the ages. In some sense, suffering happens because people have sinned. Suffering happens because people have sinned. Or suffering happens because we've somehow invited that suffering into our life. And I've had conversations with many people who are, leading teachers in the human potential movement. Some of them are on my website. Others are heads of publishing houses, right? Others are heads of, major movements, all the names that you know. And what I would ask them, how do you actually deal with outrageous pain? The response was, in one way or another, you invited it into your life. Like, wow, what does that mean? What does that mean? I sat with my colleague, Byron Katie. He's a beautiful person. We were talking about a terrible story like this of outrageous pain. It's actually a story about my mother who was buried alive when she was 4 years old in the Holocaust. And Byron basically understood suffering as that which you somehow invite into your life, and you tell a story that makes it suffering, but it's not about the objective back, it's about the story you tell about it that creates the suffering. And I said, Byron, you actually can't say that. You can only say that from the comfort of your life in upper middle class United States. What about my mother? And this dialogue is on my website. And Byron said, well, your mother could have imagined that she was in a dirt play box and somehow finding her way out, because after all, she did find her way out. And my mother did find her way out. And I said to my friend Byron Katie, that's obscene. And I actually said, if you want to stop this recording now, we can stop. And she said, no, let's do it. And she was wonderful. But she wouldn't relent the position because there was a dogmatic orthodoxy. Because she wanted to hold a vision of a loving universe. And the only way she knew how to hold that was to say that suffering is actually created only by the story that we tell about the suffering. That's not correct. And in some sense, there are strains in all mystical traditions that understand suffering as being a created human experience, but at its depth, suffering is Maya, it's an illusion. So the first statement of the new story of value in cosmoerotic humanism, which is the story that we need to actually change the trajectory of human history. The first principle is we reject those positions categorically. Categorical rejection. Suffering is not Maya, it's not an illusion. Suffering is real. Okay? Suffering is real. And we take suffering seriously. That's the point. It's not an illusion. It's real. We reject that position categorically. Number one. We reject it if it's a position that says, in the classical position of all the religions, you're suffering because you sinned. We reject that version of the position. Two, we reject the position which is suffering is Maya. It's an illusion. No, suffering is real. We live in a world of outrageous pain means we're not willing to turn away. And when we call suffering an illusion, we're turning away. It's critical. Three, we reject the New Age position or the human potential movement position, which says you're suffering because you somehow invited it into your life. And that's a classical position that appears, for example, at the Avatar seminars, and really one version or another appears in almost all New Age human potential movement forums. It's actually a restatement of the position of the religions. And just like it was the dogmatic orthodox position, which was a way of turning away from suffering, it's a new orthodoxy, a new dogmatism in the New Age human potential movement, which also turns away from suffering. Now, it's not that these were bad people, these were beautiful people. And so why did they insist on that position? Because they wanted to accomplish two things. One, they wanted to be able to experience reality as a love story. And they didn't know how to do it without saying, either you've sinned, or suffering is an illusion, or you invited it into your life. Those three possibilities. Even more, there's an underlying, not just they wanted to experience reality as a love story, they wanted to, understandably, have a dimension of control. Because if I suffer, and I don't know why, then I feel like I've completely lost control. Nietzsche, I was reading Nietzsche over the weekend. Nietzsche writes very beautifully, I can bear with any suffering if I know why. I'm paraphrasing. Because the why says I have some control. So let's say I'm suffering because I invited it into my life. Well, now I won't invite it into my life. I'll change that dynamic that attracts it to me. I can't tell you, and I've suffered in my life, and I can't tell you how many people, well-meaning, right, have called me and said, Mark, this is how you've invited this into your life, because there's parts of you that are shadow, right, that you're now not owning, and you're projecting them into the public space, and then they're projected back at you. And that was one of 13 versions, right, of you've invited this into your life. That's really just a New Age restatement of sin. And the advantage of the position is, number one, you have control, but number two, it actually frees you from the obligation to respond, because in some sense, that person invited it into their life. So we categorically reject those positions, right? That's number one, that's critical. In other words, any form of theology, any form of New Age or religious, right, or mystical theologic has to be utterly rejected. We have to actually look at the suffering head on and not turn away. Which is why we just saw that clip. We live in a world of outrageous pain, full stop. Full stop. No but, no if, no and, no theodicy, meaning no explanation of why God's still good even though God allowed this, or why the world is still a good place even though this happens. No, we just look at outrageous pain and we scream. We protest. We're devastated. And we live in the devastation without attempting to explain it away. But not only do we live in the devastation without attempting to explain it away, now the next step, we then turn to reality itself, to the real principle of reality, the principle of the real, the Atman, which is Brahman, the Mat, the Geist, the implicate order, the Ayin, the Adonai Elohim, the Great Spirit, the Great One. However you want to tell that story of the infinity of value that is cosmos, and some call it God or goddess. But however you want to tell that story, we turn to that principle as it lives in reality, as it lives in us. We turn to God and we say, and Oriana, I apologize, this is the last time we say, what the fuck? We cry out in protest. We protest. Prayer itself becomes protest. And we demand accountability from the divine. Ibrahim, the great father of Turkey and Syria, Ibrahim, in the book of Genesis, when the divine voice says, I'm going to destroy the evil of Sodom and Amorah, God has told Abraham, this is not good. These people are evil. They deserve to die. They are corrupt. Abram doesn't say, well, thank you, God. You're God, and I'm obedient. And of course, if this is what you say, you're obviously omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipotent, and all-powerful, and omni-good, right? Your infinite goodness. So you're God. I'm just Abraham. Abraham says, no, I participate in the field of value. I participate in the field of divinity. God, no. Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat is the text in Genesis. Will the God of the whole world, the judge of the whole world, will the judge of the whole world not do justice? And so Abraham holds God accountable, right? Ibrahim holds God accountable. Wow. When Moses is explained by the divine voice in the beginning of the book of Exodus, I have a plan. God says, here's the plan. You're going to go to Pharaoh. You're going to say, let my people go. Pharaoh will then increase their suffering, but then I'll step in and I'll ultimately liberate them. The early chapters of the book of Exodus, Pharaoh does exactly what the God voice said Pharaoh would do. Pharaoh increases the suffering by changing the accountability and the quota of bricks that need to be made. And Moses turns to God and says, Lama hareota la'am hazeh, God, why are you dealing evilly with these people, with these slaves? Why doesn't Moses say, oh, this is the divine plan. This is divine wisdom. This is divine omniscience. No, Moses is Moses and Ibrahim is Ibrahim because they challenge the divine voice and they demand justice. Now, stay close with me, okay? This gets so deep, it gets so beautiful, and it's so wildly heartbreaking and so wildly heart-opening. We live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. It gets very deep now. What do we mean by that? The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. So there's two meanings, but one meaning, I want to start with the first meaning. One meaning is completely different than you might have thought. In other words, we turn to the divine force, the force of love in Eros and Cosmos, because we actually have a direct experience of love. We know that love is real. We stake our lives on love. Every song is a love song. We actually have a direct access to the experience of Eros being the animating force of reality. We actually know when you see that man taking out that girl, and he says, Allah Akbar, right? And you see just his voice of the masculine seeing, right? The little girl and just the love just coming out of his voice. That love is real, right? We all know, we all have direct experience. And if we feel hurt by someone, we're devastated. And someone who we love dearly, right, doesn't see us or recognizes us or misunderstands us or leaves us, or we have to leave them, we're devastated. Our whole lives are love stories. The fabric of reality, the heart of existence itself is love, and we have direct access to the experience of love being real. Anthro-ontology, the mysteries are within us. We know love's real. And it's only because we know that love is real and that divinity is not merely omniscient. The field of value, the source of value, is not only inside of us and not only all-knowing and not only holds us, right, in infinite power, but that actually we have a direct experience that we live in an intimate universe. And that actually divinity is not just the infinity of power, but what we might call the infinity of intimacy. And that the actual name of God is the infinite intimate. And that's the new name of God that we use in cosmorotic humanism in this new story of value. And it's only because God, both the God that lives inside of me, the goddess that incarnates in me, and the goddess that holds me, it's only because God, goddess, is the infinite intimate that Abraham and Moses and Lao Tzu in his way, and Blake in his way, and Thoreau in his way, right, and Confucius in a certain moment in his way, right? It's only because we realize that the field of value is a field of Eros, right? That we live in a field of outrageous love, that God is not just the infinity of power, I say it again, but the infinity of intimacy, and the name of God is the infinite intimate. And I say it again, not as information, not because I forgot that I said it, because I want to feel it again with you. It's only to the God who's the infinite intimate that I can turn and say, as Abraham did, will the judge of the whole world not do justice? It's only to the God who's the infinite intimate that I can scream, "Zelo fair" in Hebrew. It's not fair. It can't be this way. I can only protest if I live in a world that in my body, in my very beingness, I know needs to be fair. But I don't live in a world that's outrageous love, then there's no way of protesting outrageous pain, because what's wrong with it, right? It's ordinary. It's just what happens. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just part of the structure of life. So the reason we cry out and scream, we live in a world of outrageous pain, the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. It's only if we know there's a field of outrageous love, which is the intrinsic nature of reality, that we actually realize this pain is outrageous. This shouldn't be this way. It can't be that way. It's not allowed to be that way. Right? Wow. In other words, it's only when I understand that evil is a failure, suffering is a failure of intimacy. Right? It's only suffering because it's a failure of intimacy. It's only a moral wrong because it's a failure of intimacy. Does everyone get that? It's a big deal. So I'm just going to go to the chat box for a second. How many people are tracking? Okay, how many people are tracking? Right? Did you get how we're reading this? It's beautiful, right? We live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. So the simple way of reading it is, which is completely right. The first response is, oh my God, let's get to Syria and let's do everything we can in Syria and do everything we can in Turkey. And the world has not sufficiently, but the world has mobilized. This is a moment in world-centric consciousness has woken up, not sufficiently, but at least at some degree, and saying, oh my God, the only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. And the response of outrageous love has to be to commit outrageous acts of love. And we need to have, right, 70 countries turn to Syria to put rescue teams on the ground. There are 16 on the ground right now. And there are thousands of men and women from international relief organizations combing through rubble. There are outrageous lovers, right, all over Turkey and Syria, which is unimaginable and beautiful. We need to commit outrageous acts of love. So that's one. But the second meaning of that text is we live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. The only way we can actually recognize this is outrageous pain and that it can't be, and we can't allow for it, right, is that we know that reality actually demands fairness and demands integrity. Reality is a reality of Eros. Reality is a reality in which one of its core values is fairness, which is rooted in harmony, which is a right relationship between things. And so therefore we have to turn to Turkey, not this week, not next week. We have to turn to Turkey, and we got to say to Turkey. And again, this is just this week. Oriana's given me an exception. Oriana is my dear friend, and we had a discussion about using a particular word, right, in one mountain. But this week's an exception. We have to turn to Turkey and say, what the fuck? Like, why are you allowing what's called in Turkey amnesties in your building code when you know what happened in Turkey in 1939 and you know what happened in Turkey in 1999? Tens of thousands of people killed. You know very clearly that there's going to be more earthquakes. And yet, although you technically put a building code in place, most of those buildings, and let's just say it clearly, most of those buildings should not have collapsed. And the reason they collapsed was a failure of intimacy. That's why they collapsed. They collapsed because there's a practice in Turkey called amnesties, which is essentially corruption, which is essentially the win-lose metrics, rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics, which actually governs society, the success story of each independent contractor, who basically ignores the building code. They get by the government what's called in Turkey an amnesty. I'm translating into English. And they build buildings, and I just want to get this. I want to get this. They build buildings knowing there's going to be more earthquakes. I'm going to get this clear, and I'm not going to turn away from this. Knowing there's going to be earthquakes, and knowing that those buildings will probably fall. What does that mean? The same in Syria. And what does it mean in Syria, where Bashar Assad is actually not concerned, right, about the refugees? He's concerned about his win-lose metrics and in his politics of brutality and evil again and again. And only if the aid comes through him and through the areas under his control will he distribute it. But we know historically he won't distribute the aid. And he's making a political power play as children are under rubble. And there's only one access road available into the tormented parts of Syria today that's open, when we need at least 7 or 8 roads. So I want to just track this with you for a second, because it's not only about Syria and Turkey, but actually we live in the first generation in human history in which we have the capacity to respond to natural disaster before it happens. Doesn't mean we can handle every disaster. It doesn't mean natural disaster doesn't exist. But for the first time in human history, we have the technology available and we have the resources available that actually no human being should be left outside the circle. That we actually can develop technologies which actually can, with some degree of accuracy, predict earthquakes. Number one. Number two, we can enforce building codes that will actually ensure that literally the overwhelming majority of buildings will not collapse on children sleeping, adults sleeping, men and women sleeping. We actually can do that. And we can do that when we actually are intimate with the future. We feel what's coming. We deploy our technology, right, to support the most vulnerable among us, because no one's left out of the circle. We have that capacity today. We live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. And outrageous love means, as outrageous lovers, we can actually respond, right, to natural disaster in a way that no generation in history has ever been able to respond. Okay, next point. Okay, and we're trying to work this through. Okay, you with me, friends? Are we together? Are we together, friends? Let's find this. Let's find this. Are we together? Let's find this. I'm going to go to the next step. I'm going to go to the next step. The next step is like crazy, insanely important. So why does this happen? Right? Why does this happen? Right? Why does this happen? Why does this happen? So I want to introduce with you one of the first principles and first values of Cosmos, which together with my dear friend and interlocutor colleague, Zach Stein, we just really formalized 2 weeks ago, but we've been working on for a decade. And one of the first principles and first values in Cosmos is what we might call the principle of mystery and gnosis. Gnosis means what we know. Mystery is what we don't know. The word mystery derives through a number of languages. It ultimately derives from the Hebrew, which is mystery is satir, that which is not known. Another way to say it is the hidden in the revealed. And the basic, I want to give you like a formal reading of it. I'm going to read it just kind of formally, then I'm going to try and unpack it for a second, but here we go. There's a mystery and there's gnosis, there's knowledge in all areas of Cosmos. And when we don't know something, that's not necessarily failure, epistemic failure. It's not that, wow, isn't it tragic we don't know it? No, it's actually unknowing is a quality of Cosmos. There's what we know and there's what we don't know. And I want to track this together because it's crazy important. Any attempt to give a definitive answer, right, to the problem of suffering is obscenity. That's how we began today. We never can try and storm the gates of heaven in this Promethean way, where the nature of the fire that we want to bring down from heaven is that we have an answer for everything. We don't. We don't. But our response is not blind faith. Our response is we protest. We demand answers from on high. Number one. Two, we commit outrageous acts of love. But three, we're willing, because we're mad lovers, because we're outrageous lovers, we're willing to live in the uncertainty. And I want to go deep into this for a minute, because this is where it all happens. This is what matters. So I want to try and catch this with you for a second, because it matters. This is everything. The reason we're willing to live in the uncertainty is not because we're idiots. It's not because we're faithful fools. It's because we have direct experiences, one after the other, of the intrinsic goodness of Cosmos. In other words, we actually have direct experiences that we live in a world of goodness, truth, and beauty. That we live in a world in which there's intrinsic value, in which Eros animates everything. And because we have a direct certainty of that experience, Aquinas, the great theologian in the Middle Ages, once wrote that his favorite verse in biblical text is taste and see that God is good. We actually have a direct experience of God's goodness. I'm sitting and eating, and I'm feeling my body digest the food through the cytochrome C structure in my body, protein structure, and I begin to get a sense of the dazzling complexity and beauty of my body functioning in this moment. And I see, and I'm blown away by a level of awe and radical amazement and wonder that's unimaginable. Just at the dazzling beauty and complexity of my body, right? That is somewhere between 37.2 trillion to 100 trillion cells, and then an unimaginable number of molecules and atom, all in dazzling, erotic synchronicity with each other. And we realize that actually my body is a love story. And we realize that the world, the molecular world, is a love story. And we realize that the cellular world, each cell, is a love story. And we realize that between us, reality is covered with love stories. And sometimes there's a huge tragedy. We create the boundary of the love story at the human level. We make it too small. We say the love story is only between this very small group of people, between this particular tribe or this particular race. That's a tragedy. We need to evolve love. We need to move the boundary. There can be no one left out. No one's a stranger. But actually, we actually have a direct experience in the world of matter, the molecular world, right? And in the world of life, the cellular world and the organismic world, all the way up the evolutionary chain, and in the human world, that actually what matters to us is taking care of each other. What matters to us is our love for each other. What matters for us is the depth of our devotion and the depth of our desire. And our devotion and our desire are both two expressions of reality as a love story. We desire each other. We desire contact with each other. We desire to hug each other and to hold each other. We want to touch each other. We want to touch each other physically and emotionally and existentially and psychologically and spiritually. And if we feel alone, if we feel isolated, if we feel alienated, we're devastated. Which is why if we don't have an experience of my interior touching your interior, our entire life is no longer good. We lose. It's not good for the human being to be lonely, screams one ancient text, right? Because loneliness, the experience of not knowing that I'm in a love story and not being able to actually touch you and have you touch me and our hearts touch each other, makes my life meaningless. And as we said earlier, it's why every song in every language across space and time is a love story. So actually, we know that love is real. And because we know that love is real, because we look in the face of a baby, we look in the face of the beloved, right? We look at the wonder of bees. We look at butterflies and their unimaginable beauty. We look at the depth of the ocean. We see worlds of unimaginable and dazzling, nuanced and subtle beauty that blows our hearts open again and again. And then we begin to read the poetry, right? The poetry of existence. We begin to read the poetry of science and the poetry of the humanities, right? And we realize that this is a love story. There's no other actual way to explain it. Reality is an intimate universe, and the movement of reality, a whole book we're writing on this, is the progressive deepening of intimacies. And those are certainties. We actually have direct access to those experiences. We can taste it directly. Our entire lives are built around it. So then, when we run into outrageous pain, we don't try and explain it away. We don't try and control it. We respond with outrageous love. And outrageous love means we commit outrageous acts of love. 1. 2, we protest. We turn, as Abraham and Moses did, to the divine force, and we say, we know that you're not just the infinity of power. We know you're the infinity of intimacy because we experience that in our own lives. And we say to you, what the fuck? We protest, we scream and protest. But when we scream and protest, we're affirming the dignity of life. When we scream and protest, we're actually affirming the goodness of reality. And we hold the uncertainty. We bow before the mystery, even as we seek to change and transform and heal every drop of suffering in reality because we're outrageous lovers. And we actually step in, right, to create a world that actually works for everyone. We actually respond and anticipate natural disaster in the best way that we can. So that's the next point. Now, one more point. And this is a big one. Okay, this is a big one, and we can't move without this, which is, what happens when it's over? Right? In other words, when you think about reality as a love story, you have to think beyond the boundaries of this dimension, right? So if we think about reality as a love story, we can't just think about what happens until the moment of death. We have to think beyond. We have to think in a wider field of value in Eros. Does that make sense? We have to be in a wider field of value in Eros. So at the moment that I die, and let's say I die unfairly, as most of my family did in the Holocaust. Let's say I die unfairly, okay? Let's say I die unfairly, which is tragic and horrific. And we have no right to use theologic to explain it away, right? Neither Buddhist theologic or New Age theologic or classical axial religion theologic. That's a given. But now, what happens at the moment that I die? So do I go into eternal nothingness, meaning it's over, game over, death is the end? In which case, you cannot talk about reality as a love story in any way that's ultimately significant. It's made up. We're trying to make it up. It just can't actually be true. Because within one lifetime, it's very clear that we don't have equitable fairness for every human being. It's just not the way reality is structured. Why mystery? Why is that true? Mystery. We're holding the mystery. We're protesting. We're committing outrageous acts of love. One, protest. Two, outrageous acts of love. Those are the two meanings of we live in a world of outrageous pain. The only response is outrageous love. And now stay close, my friends. And now, within one lifetime, if I actually feel that no one's a stranger and no one's left out of the circle, I can't actually experience reality as being a love story. Reality is a love story only if I actually understand that it's not over when it's over. That actually death itself is a night between 2 days. But that is not a faith claim. That's not a New Age claim, and it's not a fundamentalist religious claim. For the first time in human history, we have access to 3 forms of information that there are 3 information streams, 3 fields of gnosis that tell us 2 things. One, there's a huge mystery of death. We don't exactly know what happens. No one's come back for a long period of time, at least, and given us detailed information. No one's come back and said, okay, here I am. I've been away for 2 years. Now I'm back. We don't have that kind of information. So there's clearly a mystery of death. That's the unknowing. That's that first principle. It's the hidden. And yet, there's the hidden and the revealed. Opposites are joined at the hip. There's mystery and gnosis. And for the first time in the last 130 or 40 years, we have an enormous amount of depth knowing, which tells us that it's not over when it's over. Now, this is a very, very big topic. And I'm not going to go into it now. I'm just going to say just 3 things. One, we have actual empirical information, which has been very carefully checked. The British Psychical Society was started in Cambridge by Henry and Edith Sedgwick. I believe their last names were, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He was a brilliant professor at Cambridge. And then Sedgwick's colleague, William James, started at Harvard, another version of the American Psychical Society. And we have now 150 years of research, of probably the most carefully vetted research to actually ferret out the charlatans and to ferret out the hoaxes and to ferret out the sloppy informational reportings. And after we ferreted all that out, we have a huge body of direct information that tells us that consciousness lives independently of the body, number one. That consciousness lives independently of the body. Number 2, that there's actually direct communication, at least in some instances, in which information is conveyed after a person's died, which is not explicable by any of what you might think were the explanations. I mean, it's not explicable by, for example, the relative of a person who's died is holding information and the medium is reading their mind and that's telling us something. No, there's carefully controlled investigations which have shown us that actually we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, actual real information, vetted, carefully gathered for 150 years, that we actually have information from people after they pass, which couldn't be available in any other way than through that person. And the person who does a very, very careful analysis of this is one of the greatest Whiteheadian scholars that ever lived, David Ray Griffin, who Zachary and I communicated before he passed, right? He's a beautiful, beautiful man. And actually was excited and confirmed to us, what he thought was Whitehead's support of cosmoerotic humanism. And David wrote a book called Parapsychology, Philosophy and Spirituality, in which he examines the evidence very, very carefully and very, very conservatively. and comes to the conclusion that there's definitive and incontrovertible evidence that points very directly to the continuity of consciousness, Occam's razor, as the only explanation we know that could work for it, right? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's a very big deal. So actually, that's one source of information. There's other sources of information, which are philosophical in their nature, which I'm not going to go into, which is the critique of materialism. And there's other sources of information, which are what I would call anthro-ontological in their nature, meaning we actually have a direct experience within us that it's not over when it's over. Meaning, I'll just give you one sentence on it, because we have a direct experience that fairness is real, that fairness or justice, although those are not quite the same, but that fairness and justice are real, that reality demands fairness. And we know, number two, that fairness is not accomplished within one lifetime. That tells us that actually the story of reality can't exhaust itself in one lifetime. How many people followed that? Who followed that? Right? And it's because I have an experience, right, that fairness is real. It's a real experience. I know fairness is a real structure of reality. Children across cultures, right, demand fairness. It's not a cultural social construct. It's a universal, intrinsic structure of every human being is the demand for fairness. Since there's a demand for fairness, and we know too that fairness is not exhausted in one lifetime, that actually tells us that the story of reality can't be limited to one lifetime. That's the anthro-ontological method. So there's what I would call the empirical, the new empirical approach. There's the anthro-ontological approach, and then there's the philosophical approach, which I haven't gone into. But all three of those come to one conclusion. It's not over when it's over, friends. There's continuity of consciousness, without question. That's a big deal. So there's mystery. We don't know exactly how it works. But there's also a new knowing. Now, that doesn't justify in any way suffering. In any way. We're not using this in the old way as a theodicy. Oh, now we can justify suffering. No, our only response to suffering, we live in a world of outrageous pain. Only response is outrageous love. Outrageous love means, one, we commit outrageous acts of love. Two, we protest. We protest because reality is outrageous love. We therefore can turn to the divine in ourselves and in the structure of the field of value and say, we protest. But when we protest, we're not screaming against God. We are the voice of the divine screaming out and demanding transformation, right? Demanding that Syria and Turkey take themselves seriously and actually become outrageous lovers, which they are not today. And the universal grammar of value, it's why we need a universal grammar of value, where we need a shared story of value. So we as an international community can turn to the United States if it need to be the United States, or to Aleppo if it be Aleppo, right? Or to Turkey if it be Turkey, and say, hey, we got to be outrageous lovers together. That's not an option. An outrageous lover actually does everything they can do to respond, right, to natural disaster. And what if we knew that when a person passes, they don't go into oblivion, and they go into fire and brimstone hell set up by a malevolent, cruel divinity, but a person actually is embraced by the field of the infinite, tachat kanfei hashchina, by the wings of the goddess. And there's a sense of integrity and justice and of coming home and of welcome. There's a welcome sign in this world, but there's also a welcome sign at death's door. It's welcome to the next stage of the journey. Welcome to the next stage of your life, not as a fanciful claim, but as actually the best empirical understanding we have of reality today. And so in cosmorotic humanism, in this new story of value, we need to actually realize that reality is the love story. Reality is a love story, and we're experiencing that as we see outrageous lovers, right, all over Aleppo and Turkey. Reality is a love story because we protest any act which violates that love story. And we demand it not be that way because we know in our bodies it's not supposed to be that way, because that love story lives in us. Reality is a love story because there's a continuity of consciousness, which moves beyond this lifetime. Reality is a love story because we actually experience the good, the true, and the beautiful. We experience the radical certainty. We taste that love story in our bodies, which are love stories themselves, in the molecular, atomic world, right? In all forms and dimensions of the biosphere, and in the human world. Love stories every place and everywhere, right? Every song. The third time we said it today, every song a love song, right? It's totally a love story. So in all four of those ways, we know it's a love story. And in a love story, we hold uncertainty. We bow before the mystery, but not as faithful fools, but as those who have experienced radical trust in reality. We trust reality even as we scream out in protest and say, what the fuck? And in that moment, we only have the question, and we only have the agony, and we only have the void. And then we move through the void and we find life again. Wow. And that's the chant that Chris just started with, right, friends? To speak of your love in the morning and to trust you through the night, right? So that's what we say to each other. We look in each other's voice and we say to speak of your love in the morning, to trust you through the night. We turn to the infinity of intimacy and we say, infinity of intimacy, to speak of your love in the morning, to trust you through the night. And this week's been a night. And we scream and protest and we're furious with you. But we know, taste and see, we know the goodness of reality. And so we hold the mystery, and we hold the uncertainty, we hold the agony. And if you read the text carefully in the original Hebrew, Lagid baboker chasdecha, to speak of your love in the morning, ve'emunatcha baleilot, and the divine voice says to us, and I trust you through the night. I trust you to build buildings according to building codes. I trust you to be outrageous lovers, right? To actually create a world which no one's outside of the circle. And the most beautiful world that could ever be created in human history. We have the potential to create today. That's what we're here to do. Oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We live in a world of outrageous pain. Right? The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. Right? Oh my God, outrageous lovers. Krista, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marc Gafni. Thank you, everyone. What a beautiful, tender, and intense journey, and what a radical invitation to become even more powerful as outrageous lovers. And we are here, a band of outrageous lovers, emerging as an outrageous love revolution. And imagine what would happen if each and every one of us here would spread this outrageous love into the world, and we share outrageous love with 10 people that are close to us, and those 10 people share it with another 10 people, and those 10 people share it with another 10 people. And that's how we build this bottom-up revolution of outrageous love as a unique self-symphony. And one beautiful way that we all do that here is how we practice. It's by writing outrageous love letters. And an outrageous love letter, you can write it to yourself, you can write it to the divine, to spirit, you can write it to a tree, to your sister, to your mother, to everyone. And the idea is that you exaggerate until you are accurate. And Dr. Marc Gafni and Dr. Christina Kincaid shared so much more about this deep, beautiful practice. And I want to invite you to download the 2 books that they have written about this, The Path and Practice of Outrageous Love. And I just want to show you where you can find these. Here on our website, onemountainmanypaths.org, if you click here on resources, and then Outrageous Love books. This is where we made these books available for you, and they haven't been officially, formally edited yet. So there may be some mistakes and some notes in them, but we wanted to make these books available because this is the core of this revolution. And so many people have been asking us for this material. So you can just leave your name and your email here, and you will receive these books directly in your inbox. The second invitation that I have for you today is to actually begin to spread the love by sharing these beautiful, sweet little cards that we made that say, I love you madly, which is a simple way to just let someone know that you love them. And as we may all know, this upcoming Tuesday, it's Valentine's Day, and often we limit our Valentine's Day love to the very close circle of the people that we love. But of course, in an outrageous love revolution, we encourage each other to love each other madly, all of us, so that no one is left outside of the circle. So I want to invite all of us to participate in this beautiful practice. And if you go to our website, Eros Mystery School /Valentine, and we'll put the link in the chat box, you can find this page right here where you can download these beautiful cards if you click on this button here, and then you can share them with your friends on or your social media or in your personal network. Just let everyone know, I love you madly, I love you madly. And of course, this is also a beautiful way to participate in the revolution, because you will also be inviting your friends to join Eros Mystery School. And with this Valentine's gift, everyone will get €200 discount on this beautiful 5-day retreat that we will be having in Europe, August 21st until August 25th. So make sure that you go to this website and check this beautiful gift out. And when you're signed up for our emails, you will also receive them in your inbox right after this live stream. So now we're going to close, as we always do, with a revolutionary dance on the amazing song, How Deep Is Your Love? So I want to invite you to stand, shake it out, feel it all move through your body. And we will invite you, as it's called technically, to promote as panelists. If you click yes, then you will be able to turn on your camera. And I want to ask you to put everyone on gallery view so we can all see each other as we dance this beautiful, outrageous love day together. Thank you so, so much. Please, how deep is your love?